Good afternoon. This is Joe Bost with the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance. Hope you're doing well. I'm joined this afternoon by Representative Jason Saine. Representative Saine is a friend of the business community in the Charlotte region. He also happens to be one of the senior appropriations chairs in the North Carolina House and co-chair of the Economic Support Working Group set up by Speaker Moore to address the COVID-19 crisis. So Representative Saine, thank you for making the time and welcome.
Joe, thank you, and glad to be on with you and talk with you. I got some great feedback from our last talk, and very much appreciate that from your membership, and glad to share, what I know and what we're doing with you today.
No, thank you again for taking the time. I want to jump right in and talk about the work you have been doing and leading on the economic support group. Talk to us, since it's been a couple of weeks since we last spoke, what you guys have been hearing as a committee. I know you guys have talked to key stakeholders that we interface with on a regular basis, folks like the North Carolina Restaurant and Lodging Association, the North Carolina Chamber, the North Carolina Retail Merchants Association, and even the governor's office. It's been a really wide-ranging group of stakeholders that you all have met with. So talk to us about what you've heard and what the committee has been digesting.
Yeah, no, thank you, Joe. And it has been very important to hear from kind of all sides of the economy, right? And to get some of that input. I mean, the restaurant folks, the hospitality folks, the tourism folks, they probably hit the worst, the quickest, right? I mean, it was pretty much overnight that their industry changed. When you look at, not having, you go to almost full capacity in terms of your motels, and then going from that to nothing overnight because of scare and fear, and then just a shutdown of those type of businesses. And we understand the why, because of the interaction and people and all the reasons, and social distancing. So we know why that happened, and how that happened, how they got to be first. This is the one time where they really didn't want to be first. But unfortunately, that's what we've seen. And then what our response is going to be. I mean, we're trying to. Our committee is charged with economic support. We're the Economic Support Working Group, so it's best for us to better understand kind of the challenges. And we're doing it in a very bipartisan fashion. I've mentioned before that all of these working groups, these committees that the Speaker has appointed, are chaired by both Republicans and Democrats together. They all get an opportunity. I get to physically chair it for our committee. My co-chairs like the fact that I understand the technology is doing these meetings over web conferences and so forth. So they're just like, if you'll handle that, they do a lot of the background work, which is really nice for me too. And so we've got a good partnership. But we've had great participation, again, from both sides or all sides, however you want to look at it. And then hearing from those agencies. Heard from Golden Leaf Foundation. They started with a bridge loan program for small business. That was $15 million kind of early on. That's been promised, and so today in our working group, we have a loan program working through Golden Leaf that we're adding another $25 million. And that's probably not the end of that. We realize that. It's really just more of a start and a chance for North Carolina to do a little more, given the needs. And so that focuses on small business, 50 employees and under, and so forth, and some other criteria. But Representative Steve Ross, Representative Brendan Jones, and my co-chair Michael Ray. So you got two Republicans, one Democrat. They're the sponsors of that bill. They've worked the hardest on putting that together. On the unemployment insurance benefits side of things, we've passed legislation that so that we can kind of intercept or receive the CARES Act and the federal dollars, and how that will work. That's been a little difficult because it takes a while for everyone says, well, or sees that Congress passed the law, and so just automatically overnight the money should be available. Well, I wish it were that simple. We all know that it's not when we sit and really analyze it. So it took about a week and a half or a week to figure out what that construct was going to look like. And then the overwhelming of the system has been a challenge. This is the Employment Security Division that falls under Commerce, but they're used to maybe 1,000 claims a week. They were getting 1,000 claims an hour. So I think today I heard somewhere upwards of north of 500,000 people applying for unemployment in North Carolina. So it's a massive number. There's frustration. They can't get through on the phone line. The website crashes just because it's just overwhelmed. Now they are taking steps and doing so very quickly. Put online a new call center that's a private sector contractor that's doing that. But you have to train those people to take those calls. They didn't just wake up and decide that's what they were going to do today and had all the knowledge. So you got to take a little time to train them. We're working with citizen data, so we want to protect that. And then just getting the right people connected to the right places takes a little bit of ramp up time. So there's frustration that we have to deal with too. We hear that from our constituents. But like I said, and then focus back on the employers, those who are putting people to work and want to put people to work. Nobody really wanted to. We might have wanted a long weekend, but nobody wanted to stay for a long, long time in their home and shelter in place. Though we know that that's probably one of the safest things that we could do right now. And so our committee is just charged with how do we want to accept that reality and then take that reality and figure out what the future looks like for the state. So none of us want to stay stuck in this. But we'll come out with some other guidelines. Our main goal, just to give everyone who may not be familiar or following it, is to have some legislation ready to go when we go into session on April 28th. So we've worked with the administration. You mentioned that we had a representative from the governor's office come in and kind of debrief legislators on some of the processes and some of the thought processes that brought us to some of the executive orders. But then next week, we're inviting someone back from the governor's office to find out what that plan to restart the economy is. Because I think that's something that particularly the audience that listens to our committee work, they really want to know what that looks like. And we're seeing protests, folks wanting to reopen. And again, as legislators, we understand that frustration. Everybody does. But we want to make sure that whatever plan is enacted, that it's a safe plan, that it's one that gets as many people back to work as possible in a short amount of time, but in a safe way. So these are some of all the challenges that we're kind of taking into consideration in our committee.
Yeah, everybody wants to reopen the economy. Everybody wants to get people back to work. Everyone wants to get people back to school. We all collectively want that. But to your point, it's a balancing act between the public health aspects of it and getting people back to work. And so we don't want to, for all the hard work that's gone into sheltering at home and in place, and everybody doing their darndest to make sure they're practicing social distancing, we can't have a relapse. And so I know you all as legislators and policymakers have a tough hill to climb on the balancing act. Again, certainly understand where the protesters may be coming from, but at the end of the day, we've got to make sure we're making the right decisions and being very methodical and data driven about it. And the response I've seen from all sides here, the legislature and the governor's office, have been very focused, very data driven in how we go about moving from point A to point B and to point C, which is hopefully reopening the economy here shortly. Well, you mentioned session in 2 weeks. I'd love to hear what you anticipate happening in 2 weeks from today. I know this date's been on the calendar for a while, well before this outbreak occurred. Do you anticipate just these couple of bills that the House has been considering? Do you expect much legislative action? Give us a glimpse of what to expect, and maybe just functionally how you guys will be able to work as a legislature and practice social distancing.
Yeah, thank you. That's an excellent question, and one that we're still answering. I'll take the last question first. We've got the real challenge of taking, on the House side, 120 people and all of our support staff and fiscal staff and research staff that are normally housed here at the legislature, and figuring out a way that we can safely practice our dark arts, if you will, and do that in a way that we can be properly distanced. Committees were often sitting beside of each other. I imagine as we go back, some of our committee work is going to be also by video conference like we're doing now. Even if we're on site there at the legislature, I may be doing many of these sitting at my desk at the legislature in my office versus on the House floor or in a committee meeting. On the House floor, we sit two together. So my seatmate is John Torbett from Gaston County next door. As much as I'd like to see John, I don't think he nor I really want to be in that close a proximity like we normally are. So we'll probably rotate in and out. We'll probably do that in shifts to vote. We're focused on having legislation before the body that is pretty much broad agreement, so that if there's debate, we'll kind of channel that through the majority leader and the minority leader, let them give whatever arguments that they want to give in support or in opposition of the measures that we're taking, but kind of, again, adopt and adapt. We certainly can't have the public in the building. We can't have lobbyists. We can't have reporters. I think that they had decided on doing like a pool camera and a kind of a pool reporting team that one will go in and handle that for the rest, and they'll just share that information. And of course, then the legislators were available to reporters like we are now via web conferences and phone calls. So that'll change how we operate, and we'll keep it very narrow. We'll focus there, because the other reality is normally we would go in. The reason we have the April 28th date is that it was to be right after we collected the tax revenue on April 15th. We would know how much money we had in the coffers, what to spend that money on. We could make those decisions, but we won't know until around July 15th, because of the move of the date. That's something that our committee has done. It's not law yet. So if anyone tells you that, oh no, you still by law are accumulating penalties, interest, and fees, that is correct. Until we get to the legislature and actually can pass that law, we'll pass it retroactively. So if you've paid, you'll be refunded. But if you've not, hold on to that on some of those fees and things. You're okay. The governor has issued an executive order based on the work of our committee. We, in coordination with the governor, he can't technically change the law, but he can make this order. It's kind of a telling you it's going to be okay, backed up by the fact that we have said publicly in our committee, this is what we're going to do. So it's a new way of legislating, certainly, but we will go back and make that right as far as the legal documentation. But so just those type of little challenges and nuances of you just don't move a date, you just don't change when you're going to do things in state government. I wish it worked that easy, but it doesn't, and because so many other things rely on something else, and it's a domino effect. So we'll go and pass those smaller pieces of legislation, like the $25 million bridge loan to that Golden Leaf will administer, and so forth. But in the meantime, we will also continue with our work, understanding, hearing from the various different areas of the or sectors of the economy, knowing what we're looking at as far as healthcare, what's the burden truly going to be. We can all look at data modeling and pick whichever one you like, but they're still just best guesstimates. And some of these don't factor into human behavior. If we issue an executive order and no one follows it, and they don't really practice social distancing, have we really flattened the curve? I think looking at the numbers, it looks like so far so good. It seems to be working some. So we haven't had the ramp up like you saw in New York City, that because just proximity and people and so many people in such a small space that it spread very easily. We're fortunately a little more spread out, and I think we got ahead of this thing a little bit. But you're also going to see sessions where we're all going to be wearing masks. So that may be a welcome change for some of our mugs that have faces for radio. But I'll share with you, Representative Howard Hunter is a good friend of mine, and he's a Democrat from Eastern North Carolina. And Howard and I have been friends ever since I got to the legislature. And so I saw him on his Facebook page. He posted up, he had a Star Wars handmade mask that someone had sewn together for him, I think a relative. And I said, man, I like that. I'm a big Star Wars fan. And I said, is there any way you could help a brother out and maybe send 3 this way? And so in my mail today, I've got 3 Star Wars masks. So my son and my wife and myself, we're all we're going to be a little more fashionable, a little more cool or nerdy, however you want to look at it. And we'll have our masks. So I mean, all those things will be kind of the underlying challenge for us. We also have to keep not just ourselves safe, because we have families. I know people don't like to think about politicians as being real people, but we are. And so we have families. We don't want to bring back an infection to them, the virus to them. We have staff that also have families. It's not just the work that they do, that they choose to do, but it's how we protect them. We want to be a good employer also, so we're not endangering their livelihood and their lives. So we'll do the best we can with that. We're constructing ways to do that. But then what you'll see is, hopefully, as we understand this virus more, as we get into latter part of May and early June, maybe we can free up a little bit more and meet more on a regular basis, somewhat face to face. But certainly online we'll be doing that. So July 15th, the money comes in. That'll be the deadline. Shortly thereafter, we'll kind of know what we have in terms of revenue. Expecting, of course, a sharp downturn. Obviously, if people can't go buy things because they're at home, sales tax is not going to be a huge contributor. Income tax will be based off of last year, but that also will present its own challenges a year from now. So, and we have done a great job at saving dollars. We built a great economy in North Carolina. We had a lot of surpluses that were running. We were very pragmatic about the money that we were spending and keeping some in reserve. And for better or for worse, because we couldn't reach a budget agreement last year, money was left on the table. We had that continuing resolution that runs. So state government runs, but it wasn't. We didn't get to put into effect a lot of new spending. So that money just, for lack of a better term, sat there. Today, what a silver lining. We didn't think so at the time, but it does give us a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more assurance that our state, at least, can be in a better place when this is all over. And then we had built up about $3.5 billion in the unemployment insurance fund that is money that is taken out by or spent, given to the government on behalf of the employee. So in case they do find themselves in an unemployment situation, that money's there. So, all things considered, we're in a better place than most, but still very challenging for us, and it's going to change a lot of things in how we do business.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Well, I would encourage you, of course, to stay into session into early May so that you can effectively utilize your Star Wars mask on May the 4th.
Well, maybe I can just bring us back for one day.
Literally for no other reason. I know that the upcoming session is going to be very short. You guys are going to be very focused and targeted, but y'all have to figure out a way to do a committee meeting or something where you're presiding and be able to wear the Star Wars mask on May the 4th.
I'll make that promise to you. We'll find a way.
That's awesome. Love the shirt. The 49ers, UNC Charlotte, big part of our region, as the public university in the Charlotte region. So great shirt. They're a great partner of all of ours. I know you're a 49er alum, so love the shirt. Appreciate the time and your leadership for the Charlotte region and the business community. Representative Saine, thanks so much, and we'll talk again soon.
Joe, thank you, and always glad to be with you. Call me anytime.